feels very intimidating. Even Richard Feynman once said that nobody really understands quantum mechanics. But what really matters for us is not to understand the equations, it's about understanding its implications. Over the last couple of years, we have seen serious capital flow coming into the space and public quantum companies rallying and correcting, and large tech companies and governments doubling down. At the same time, timelines are still uncertain and hype can easily distort reality. So today's session is about cutting through the noise. What we will try to cover is what quantum can realistically do today, where real use cases are emerging, especially when combined with AI, and how investors should think about risk, timelines, and opportunities in this sector. I have a wonderful panel here today, and people who bring very different perspective to quantum from EdenBase. Everyone who doesn't know about EdenBase, a quick background on EdenBase. It's a London headquartered venture platform focused on frontier technologies, particularly quantum computing and AI. The team brings deep experience as operators and ecosystem builders, having built, scaled, and backed technologies businesses globally, not just deploying capital. EdenBase combines disciplined venture investing with strong sector experience and its ecosystem-led approach. Through its quantum fund and Cubase in London, um, eco, um, it connects startups, researchers, corporates, and global investors to accelerate real commercial outcomes. The platform is focused on long-term value creation and technologies expected to define the next decade. I'm privileged to have these people from EdenBase on the panel. To begin with, we have Daniel Dahl Stanberg. He is the general partner at EdenBase. He just to give a quick introduction on Daniel, he has built disruptive tech startups, managed large-scale corporate change, and advised governments and multinational organizations on policy and regulation. Daniel invests in convergence of AI, quantum computing, blockchain, and immersive tech, and that are rapidly becoming general purpose. In 2021, he built the financial model for Quantum Computing Inc.'s NASDAQ listing. His book, Unsupervised, which I would recommend highly for people who haven't read it yet, it became the Bloomberg Book of the Year and focuses on how quantum AI and other frontier technologies are impacting our lives and society today, and how we all need to seize the opportunity and what could happen if they were left unchecked. Daniel started his career in global derivatives technology industry in the early 90s, and he founded in 2017 the Atari Token Project to build a metaverse-based new economy platform with Atari, an Ethereum founder, and several gaming leaders. Daniel was also appointed by the European Commission as an expert advisor specializing in education, disruption, and future of work. He also advised the UK government and has co-written a report on innovation in 2012. The other panelist we have here is Eric. Eric is co-founder and general partner at EdenBase. He is also a disruptive tech investor, entrepreneur, and one of London's leading tech ecosystem builders, now leading the charge in quantum by launching Cubase, London's Quantum AI Center for Excellence. He previously supported Cambridge Quantum Computers, now Continuum, the world's largest full-stack quantum company, on their 2019 capital raise, and today supports their secondary transactions. He was also the driving force in bringing a Nasdaq-listed quantum photonics company to the UK and has hosted several quantum industry roundtables. Eric has previously created and led some of the UK's and Switzerland's most prestigious technology ecosystems and hubs. This includes world's leading fintech hub Level 39, as well as the groundbreaking breaking Tech Nation initiative, where he was appointed by the UK Prime Minister to develop UK's tech economy. He was also instrumental in building the trade body for fintech, Innovate Finance. Finally, we also have Dr. Eloisa on the call. She is the principal at the EdenBase Quantum Fund, where she leads the investment across quantum computing and quantum-enabled technologies. Dr. Eloisa brings nearly 2 decades of experience spanning venture capital, growth equity, and deep scientific research with track record that includes investments such as Skyscanner, Farfetch, iZettle, and many more. Dr. Eloisa holds a PhD from University of Cambridge, completed in collaboration with Pfizer, where her research focused on computational modeling and optimization problems, closely aligned with the types of challenges quantum computing is designed to address. Finally, I will be moderating this conversation. For people who don't already know about me, I'm Nayan Gala. I've been in the venture capital industry for almost a decade. I have been an angel investor in space tech, biotech, defense, and many more, and recently quantum in UK, US, and India. Been a director and in the investment committee for 2 venture capital growth funds and raised over $125 million and invested in over 150 startups. So now that's the introductions to the panelists here. And now coming to the more interesting part to start the webinar. I wanted to set the scene and probably we'll start with Daniel. Daniel, we all know about the state of quantum today. Would love to hear your perspective on, what has really changed in last 24 to 36 months that has triggered such a surge in investors' interest. And if we strip away the hype, what can quantum computers generally do today than classical systems struggle with?
Well, very big question, but thank you, Nayan. Look, quantum computers are the ability for us to control subatomic particles. So about 100 years ago, Niels Bohr and Einstein started positing that the universe behaved quantum physically. And they created the beautiful mathematics behind this to explain how the universe operated and subatomic particles operated. And then in the 1970s, Richard Feynman, who you quote, suggested that we could actually control these and create compute power out of them. And between the 1980s and today, various people have been trying to control these particles and create computers, most notably IBM from the 80s. And over the last 45 years, we have made tremendous strides in our ability to do this. And if you consider the basis for this, I think you have to really look at three words. One is superposition, that particles can exist in multiple states at once. Second is entanglement, that those particles can entangle with each other. And thirdly, there is a collapse. So when you observe those particles, they collapse to a state. And that is the basis for this. And so to control those things requires enormous science. And so what has changed over the last 24 to 36 months, as you said? Well, the science is being solved. We have been able to control those subatomic particles and build, in quotes, computers based on them. So there are things that you've got to sort of understand when you're building a quantum computer. First is a qubit. A qubit is a control of one of those particles. You can entangle those together. You have gates that can manipulate them. And then on top of that, you can have algorithms that control and write processes based on that. And so going back to the base layer, which is the qubit, I would define 3 types of qubit. There are physical qubits, which are a workable system, a workable control. You have a logical qubit, which is a fully error-corrected version that we can use all the time. And the word I like, workable qubit, which is a qubit which we can use. Not fully reliable, but we can use. And if you consider at the beginning of last year, with all our science skills, up until the beginning of last year, we had 0 workable qubits. At the end of last year, we had 10 workable qubits, and a month ago, Quantinuum announced and are going to deliver a 50 workable qubit machine. Now, what does that mean in principle? It means that we can start to perform compute on these systems at scale. You mentioned my book I wrote the book in 2020, 2021, and I suggested that 100 logical qubits was going to be where these computers had quantum advantage. I think it's probably about 125 now because high performance computers improved. But if you consider we just reached 50 and they are on the way to having 100 by early 2027 and many thousands by the early 2030s, you can see that we are going to have that. The second number I think you need to look at is around 400 to 500 workable qubits when you have quantum advantage in materials, in chemistry, in biology, in certain domains. And then 4,000 workable qubits, which is theoretically the breaking of RSA encryption, which is the encryption that we currently use to protect most of the world's secrets, is about 4,000. We're talking about 4 to 8 years that we reach those sort of levels. What does quantum do? Well, quantum only really does two things. It doesn't compete with high performance compute in most domains. It's not a faster high performance computer. It is a different type of computer. An analogy that I quite like is, imagine we had a world in which we just had refrigerated trucks, so we could transfer goods locally over land masses, but we never had ships or container ships. And now we invent refrigerated container ships. It opens up the globe to a new global trade, makes it much bigger, but you couldn't use a container ship to deliver within a city or between cities across landmass, and you couldn't use a truck to go across the water. That's a similar analogy. The more quantum computers you have, the more trucks and high performance computers you need. So it is not a replacement. Eloisa will probably talk in more detail about it, but the two things it's very good at, and it's only two, are matching. So matching is a factorial problem. If you have 5 things to match, you have 125 combinations. If you have 10, you have over 3 million. If you have 25, you have one with 25 zeros on the end. For a high performance compute to match 25 things optimally, it takes longer than the universe has existed. The second thing it does very well is simulation. So because it is based on subatomic particles, it simulates subatomic particles very well, which is the basis for materials, for, well, anything in the universe, materials, chemistry, biology, anything that's probabilistic. And just to finish off, I think the key thing is, and we write this in the book, quantum is one of a number of technologies. We cannot look at it in isolation and just say that's the only thing. It is probably the most powerful technology we have ever built, but it is one of a domain. Those include things like artificial intelligence, smart data protocols like blockchain, and immersive technologies, communication technologies, etc. And it fits within that. But the very delivery of these technologies will change the future of artificial intelligence, and they will change the future of everything we're building. And just my final comment would be, when I was at the launch of the 50 logical qubit workable qubit machine, Jensen Huang videoed in to say the first thing they are building is quantum AI, and all data centers they see going forward will be GPU, QPU, and AI, and that changes the trajectory of everything we know.
Brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. That was a great start. I'd like to ask the next question to Eric. Eric, you have a tremendous experience of building ecosystems. And as I mentioned in my introduction about Level 39 is one of the most successful fintech accelerators through which we've had several unicorns and decacorns come out of London. And you are building something similar now with EdenBase. So can you give us a little bit more about how EdenBase is being built, and what is the differentiator there, and how investors, operators, people who are quantum enthusiasts can use EdenBase and its benefits?
Sure, thank you, Nayan. Delighted to do so. Thank you very much for inviting me to contribute. Well, as you heard from Daniel so far, and you'll also hear from Eloisa, that it's no longer a science challenge, it's an engineering challenge to deliver usable, workable qubits. And the thing that we don't know yet is quite how this additional processing capability will impact business. And as you know, Nayan, previously we successfully launched and created Level 39 here in London, which became the place, if you're a startup in fintech, to be, because you would meet the customers there, you'd meet your investors there, you would learn, they would learn together with you what the power of fintech could be. And that was very successful. So we believe very strongly in the importance of creating world-class ecosystems to support young technology-powered businesses. We also think we're probably some of the best people in the world to do that, because we call it orchestrating serendipity. And so at a base level, EdenBase, which is here in the heart of City of London, in a partnership with Northeastern University, is 12,000 square foot, right in the City of London, the middle of the financial district, where we say business will learn about quantum and quantum methods so that it's ready to take quantum advantage. It will also be the home to many of the companies that our fund will be investing in, our quantum fund, which will invest in approximately 25 quantum companies over the next 2 years. And it will be the place where we connect quantum companies who are solving for particular use cases that business has. So how do we do that? In 3 ways. One is we are planning a full 12-month event series with mixers for the quantum curious, right the way through to professional grade events, right the way through the next 12 months. If you look at the EdenBase and if you look at the EdenBase LinkedIn, you'll see the notifying you of these events. And so you can join. Many of the events will be open to the public. You'll be able to join them. But in addition to the event series, there will also be executive education. We're launching a specific executive education where an executive who is from the business side or an executive who's from the technology side, and when I say technology, I mean maybe a data scientist, for example, can come and join just initially a 4-hour session in an afternoon to learn about Quantum 101. What are the basics to learn about quantum? How to think about quantum for my business? And this is very important to raise awareness within business across the board of the potential of quantum in all of the applications that Daniel hinted at it could help with to unlock. Then the second major thing that we were doing and convening at EdenBase is proof of concept, or POCs as we like to call them. And we have quite a few suggestions and proposals for POCs. And what these are is somewhere between a 3-month and 6-month project where a business comes in with and shares with us their hardest compute problem, things that classical computers just can't do at the moment. I'll give you some examples in a second. But what we do is we match them to a quantum company that has an interest in that area, and we design a proof of concept together to figure out what type of application. Is it a hybrid of classical computers plus quantum that actually will give you some benefits? And those proof of concepts will help industry better understand the incredible power of this technology so that it's ready for quantum advantage. And of course, that's very valuable for us as a fund to know, Dr. Eloisa will be very keen to understand which quantum companies have solutions that are actually useful for the corporates. And that's going to be very popular. We've already had, I think, 4. We haven't even announced our PRC program. This group, by the way, is some of the first to hear about this. And we've already had 4 submissions for proof of concepts. But let me tell you about those submissions, just so you can understand what they are. In the world of financial services, for example, one of them is simply the counterparty risk matching. Quantum is very good for the reasons Daniel mentioned in helping improve risk. So anyone, for example, that's used a Monte Carlo simulation will understand that it's limited in the amount of data or parameters that it can process. The potential for quantum to actually improve that is huge. And so we want to be at the forefront of helping business. For example, the insurance industry, which is heavily leans on risk and many algorithms to understand risk, needs to become fully aware of the power of quantum to be able to do this, right the way through to material science, chemistry, biology. Many people have talked about how quantum computing could help drug discovery and help us find new potential solutions for some of the world's most difficult diseases. That is so exciting, and literally people are investing billions in that as we speak, because this is such transformative technology. So I tend to say to people, if you're from any industry that does anything with materials or goods or supply chain or anything that needs optimizing or anything that has risk associated with it or anything that needs to better understand how chemistry can be improved to improve outputs, things like nitrogen fixation in the food industry could massively help improve food productivity. Now is the time to get stuck in, and we're going to be helping convene that, helping organize these proof of concepts so that people better understand that to be able to eventually take quantum advantage.
Thank you, Eric. That's very helpful. So, again, this is an open invite to people who are quantum curious to, look at Cubase. You can find more information on LinkedIn about it as well. And it's more for you to learn continuously on the progress on quantum. So coming to our third panelist, Dr. Eloisa, you have been looking at probably 100 plus startups as part of being a principal at the Quantum Fund in London. What I wanted to understand was, what are the real world use cases you are seeing already moving from lab to pilots today? And are we really seeing startups which are generating revenue, or are they still in the very early days?
Yeah, so whenever people ask this question, there's always like a common answer. It's going to be in materials or chemistry or logistics. But the interesting thing is we're actually seeing other use cases for quantum algorithms using very modest QPUs. And one of them would be in, or we have actually seen a startup in computational fluid dynamics, for example. It's about searching a design space and finding the most optimum design for a specific problem or any multi-physics simulations. So, and I think one thing to really think about, and I'd like all of the people watching today, is it's not, when you hear chemistry, logistics and finance as like the first use cases, people only say that because of one thing and one thing only. And that is because these industries have optimization or simulation problems with few enough variables that could be fit into current quantum computing machines that we have today, but still have a very high value knock-on effect if you manage to solve those optimization or simulation problems. So in a sense, like in your respective industries, just think about so an optimization problem is simple. It's asking yourself the question, out of all the possible choices I could make, which one is best under these particular constraints? It could be the best route in a logistics problem. It could be the best portfolio in a finance problem, or a best schedule also in logistics, best configuration for chemistry. So those are the things we are seeing some companies, and there are quite a few startups that are popping up actually in the quantum chemistry and quantum materials space. And the interesting thing about that space is because molecules and in general are quantum systems fundamentally. So quantum can model, the best thing that quantum can model are quantum systems, which is why materials and chemistry would be the most natural fit. But really, it could be any optimization problem, and it could be any simulation problem. So if you've got a simulation problem in your own industries, the question typically is, if I build a virtual copy of this system, how will it behave under different conditions? So that's like a simulation problem, right? So for example, it could be like materials under stress, or flows in a turbine or the atmosphere, or molecules in a new drug. So, and we are seeing, even finance, actually, we're seeing a lot of, I've spoken to someone who worked at the bank, can't talk much about it, but they have started to use it in some finance use cases. Now, if you go out there and look at, information or articles around, quantum in finance, they say, oh, it's going to take a while because it's going to require 1,000 qubits. But actually, people within finance are already experimenting on it. And it's simply because it's just asking the question of what's the most high value optimization problem that I can do that will impact my business and my decision making in a very positive way. So, so yeah, that's what we've been seeing. Other than the usual quantum chemistry and materials problems, we are also seeing it being used in finance and computational fluid dynamics, any multi-physics simulation problems.
Amazing. Thank you. So I'll come back to you, Dr. Eloisa, with some more technical questions in a bit. Just for the investors in the room and potential people who are looking to invest in the space, one of the things I've been seeing is there's been a lot of surge in the public quantum stocks, then corrections, and then again surge. A lot of big tech companies, governments are heavily involved and investing money into this space. Capital is flowing, although the timelines have been uncertain. What I've tracked is close to around $6 to $7 billion been invested in last 1 quarter in this space. So a question to both Daniel and Eric, whoever wants to take this, is why are we seeing such a strong investor appetite now, despite the timelines?
I think Daniel should do that.
Okay. Look, it's the current phase of quantum to me feels extremely similar to pre-93 internet, when we were building the routers and the fiber and building the first browsers and the first web page systems like front page. Very similar to 2016, early 2017 blockchain, identical to 2019, 2020 AI, and now we have 26, 27 quantum. And what generally happens in that space is you get awareness of people within the space, and you start to get money flowing into the spaces. And as that happens, that money gets directed into the people where the money can be directed. So in the quantum space, the only place that people, unless they're extremely sophisticated or very lucky, can invest is in the public markets. And so what we see is a very small number of companies getting a small amount of money in relative terms. And I mean relative because, $6 or $7 billion sounds an enormous amount of money. But that's how the US system tends to work. It tends to be private companies that deliver. But if you look at what's happening in AI already, a startup being created by someone that leaves one of the big OpenAI's could raise $2 or $3 billion with a piece of paper, and so that we have that to come next. So if you look at AI again in 2019, Microsoft put about $1 billion into OpenAI. In about 2020, end of 2020, early 21, they put $10 billion in. And that was the same sort of cycles you're seeing. What will happen in this space is, as there is more awareness of the technology, which we now call a chat GPT moment, thanks to OpenAI. As that happens, you see a rush of money to the public stocks. In AI, it was the Googles, it was the app, it was the Microsofts, it was the Metas, etc. And then you have much more investment in private stocks, mainly through funds. And so you will see the same cycle. So if you look at, for instance, crypto, which is blockchain crypto is an interesting one because it's the first time you had liquidity in startups. So it's an interesting thing to look at. If you look at the general market, there was a spike in 2014, 15 that went to about $300. If you look at Bitcoin as a derivative or an example of it, then in 2016 it hit about $800. And then it hit about $20,000 by 2017, end of 2017, and then it fell to about $6,000. That seemed like a total crash, but actually, those cycles, when you look at the curve, 10 years later, you can't even see them on the curve, and we'll see that now. So you will see these fluctuations because there is no real news out of these companies. There is press releases, and those press releases cause either small buying or small selling, which is volatility. So if you look at the public sector, the public stocks, they've increased between 10 and 20x in 2 years. And that's including a 40% fall in the last month or two. And so there is a general movement up. The other thing you're going to see in the public markets is there will be a few more listings. There was Inflection a couple of months ago. There are a couple that are lined up coming up. So we would expect by the end of this year, 2026, you will see about 5, 6, 7 public stock, and then the companies like Honeywell or Google or Microsoft that have big exposure to quantum, though obviously the market cap of those companies means you have to have very large movement in the domain. In the private sector, we've also seen it a little bit. There has been more money coming into the private sector, which has meant that the valuations of private companies have increased slightly. But the positive of that is more money is coming into them. And as Eric said quite rightly, and I will expand it a little bit, there are 4 or 5 ways of making a quantum computer. In 1 or 2 of those ways, we've moved from science to engineering. And the more money you put into engineering, the faster you solve that. That's a very human, capable thing. The science, on the other hand, the more money you put into that, the more chance you have of solving the science. So what we would expect is the general increase in attention of this space will lead to a much faster delivery of these technologies than we can expect, than we previously expected.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so one other question which comes to me a lot when we're talking about quantum is around how quantum is going to be accelerated with AI, or are they working together or in parallel? How data centers are going to come into the effect? Is NVIDIA going to play a role in this with its chips? So I would love to just get a view from Dr. Eloisa or any of you in terms of how some of these technologies are playing together, or are going to complement each other in this going forward.
Shall I take this question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So quantum AI, in the beginning, I was actually like, quantum AI, it doesn't even make sense. Like, it's actually 2 quite different things. But really, I think I would like to modify that from quantum AI into three different buckets. Number one is quantum for AI. Number two is AI for quantum. And number three is anything else that doesn't fit in that bucket, like optimization problems. So quantum for AI, it's basically using quantum devices to generate high quality synthetic data. It turns out quantum is really good at helping AI generate synthetic data, which means you can speed up training and AI, for instance. And actually, one of the Continuum panelists a few months ago said a really good example when an audience member asked her a question. And that is like self-driving cars. It's become it's self-driving cars. Why aren't we having self-driving cars everywhere? I mean, there are many factors why not, but one of them is actually the training data for the AI system that's supposed to do your self-driving. There's a lot of these data, for example, that are outliers, and it's actually quite difficult for AI or generative AI to come up with like a realistic outlier type data, which quantum is actually quite good at. And so if you think about quantum for AI, it's all about helping AI generate synthetic data, which means it will accelerate the training. So for anything where you need synthetic data, and that's the bottleneck, then that's where quantum can help AI. Next bucket is AI for quantum. And this is actually the most mature. And this is using machine learning to, for example, optimize quantum circuits or auto-calibrate noisy quantum hardware, or discover better error mitigation strategies. So things like that. It's like using AI to accelerate the development of QPUs or hardware in general. And the third bucket would be any kind of joint optimization problems. So the good thing about quantum is it's amazing at coming up with all possibilities in a combinatorial optimization problem, and AI is amazing at recognizing patterns. So what could happen is that you could use quantum to explore huge combinatorial spaces while AI handles the pattern recognition on the results. So just to clarify what quantum AI is, I think it's actually in those three different buckets, and anything else that says quantum AI but can't really tell you which part is actually quantum or how it improves specific machine learning tasks is probably just like a marketing branding campaign.
Okay, thank you. So coming back to investing again, as a family office, investing into deep tech, sometimes it's very hard to evaluate these technologies. So again, a question to the panel: if I was a first-time quantum investor, what are the common mistakes that one can make? And how do you participate in this journey of investing into quantum?
Who do you want to do that, Nayan?
You can do it, Eric, if you want to, or Daniel.
All right, I'll do it. So if I was running a family office, what I would not do is be beguiled by the smoothest talking quantum founder that I met that made sense to me, because there's so much more under the hood that matters in quantum investing. Dr. Eloisa, for example, has categorized the 10 base layers of quantum into 10 specific categories. This has become so important. It's actually the UK government has asked for it to be fed into the National Wealth Fund so that they're aware of what our thesis is. And then within each of those subcategories, I mean, let's just take one, for example. How do you evaluate quantum memory, right? We all know that memory is important in quantum computers, but how do you evaluate quantum memory, which does very different things to traditional memory? It's got one particular kind of memory has to store the state of a photon over kilometers or similar, and so these are very difficult to evaluate unless you're benchmarking against a lot of other quantum companies. And that's what we are doing, we're investing heavily in deeply understanding the base layer stack so that we can take a very good judge of which companies are most likely to succeed. And I think that's very important data. There's very few quantum funds out there. You know, we look for them because we want to co-invest with them, right? And there's just not enough of them who know how to evaluate quantum companies and price them. And then the third bucket is understanding what their technology will be most valuable for. A good example of that is Oxford Ionics, that quantum startup from Oxford, came as a spin out of Oxford University that was recently sold for 1 billion to IonQ without any meaningful revenues at all. So you understand the strategic value of these companies, and that's in the base layer. So what I would suggest is invest alongside others who have invested in deeply understanding the base layer. Then in the application layer, it's quite early. So even the EdenBase Quantum Fund, for example, has 20 investments it's going to make in the base layer, plus 5 which are the application layer. And they might be in things like, you know, quantum sensing, as possibly as quantum-enabled technology, because that, for example, quantum sensing could be incredible for mining and minerals, the ability to actually deeply identify patterns within, you know, deep underground in a way that we just can't do them at the moment. That's a very viable sector. So I think the right breakdown is look for people that are investing in the majority of the base layer today with some applications, because we call the application layer moonshots, by the way, because we're only going to do 5, but they could all return, of course, the whole of the fund if they're successful. But what we will learn through the POC process that we're going to go through over the next few years is which applications deliver the most ROI. And that will then tell us which application companies to invest in, literally over the next two couple of years. And we think that that knowledge initially is quite proprietary, and that's why we're investing in it.
Brilliant. Thank you. So with this, conscious of the time, I would like to open the floor to the audience. If you have any questions, please raise your hands, or you can unmute and ask your question. So I will give everyone a moment to, ask, think about your questions, and please raise your hands. Whilst people are doing that, I wanted to ask one more question to Dr. Louisa. Not trying to, predict the future too much, but, if you had to think about next 3, 5, 10 years, how do you see quantum progressing?
Well, if you think about just 2 years ago, there's the quantum computers that we have only had 3 qubits. And then earlier this year, it was 20? And then like at the end of the year, we've got 50. So it's quite an exponential rise in amount of qubits. And why am I talking about qubits? Because that's really the main, if you want to call it, the KPI of how close we are to unlocking the power of quantum computers. So if you follow that trajectory, within the next 3 years, you're probably going to have 100 logical or useful qubit machines. And everyone agrees that at 100 qubits, you're going to have very useful optimization algorithms that could tip the industry from being suboptimum to being well optimized, which means it's going to unlock a lot of value. Right. So I think within the next 3 years, we're probably going to be seeing the early signs of what people call quantum advantage. And then within the next 5 years, you're probably going to see some exits and some consolidation in the market in quantum as quantum computing companies are gaining more and more traction with customers, with governments and the industry. Is going to become more of a topic, probably a hot topic, really. And it's interesting because Daniel talks about like it's going to be a national security topic. in the future and even now. 10 years, it's hard to imagine, but sky's the limit, really. If you imagine that quantum computers are ubiquitous and everything is hyper optimized in our world because, all companies, governments all have that as their, powerful supercomputers in the back end. You might see improvements in society. For example, personalized drugs for everyone, which is going to be cheaper, effectively, and many others that we probably can't even imagine. So if you think about it, like if someone asked me the same question, like, oh, the discovery of electricity in the late 19th century, what would the future look like, in like in 20-10 years time? And no one would have probably predicted that it's going to look like the cities that we have today. So it's an exciting time, absolutely. And we think that quantum technology has that capacity to take us from one era in civilization to another, simply because of the things that it could unlock and the innovations and the breakthroughs that it could solve.
Amazing. Yeah, it's very exciting to, see the potential that quantum holds. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? If you don't want to come and speak online, you can also type in your questions in the Q&A box.
Nayan, this is Abhineet here.
Hi, Vineet.
Hello, everybody. One question regarding the fact sheet or some details. I can't seem to have received so far. Has something been launched? Can we get what is the sort of term sheet which talks about how much to invest, what is the sort of size of the fund, etc. Maybe I've missed it, but if you have, you can send it across.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Vineet. Yeah, I'll share something with you, sure.
And also, we did speak separately with Eric as well. But we've invested, and maybe for the benefit of others as well, in this forum. I have already invested in various quantum computing ETFs. And there are ones, I'm looking at VANIC as well, which we have invested in them. It's got Ionic, Intel, Alphabet, some of the bigger companies too in it, Synopsys and various other in the US. And you have told me, and it may be useful for others to appreciate, that this is not just a UK fund, it's more of a global fund as you're raising that money. But my question is that these other companies, which are already listed companies, are already participating in it. What is the sort of specific benefit of going via EdenBase particularly, and not directly via investing in those sort of ETFs or companies directly, I guess?
I think the easiest answer to that is that because it's new, there's only very few quantum companies that are actually listed. And by doing what we're doing with the fund, we think we've identified the next generation of those companies that are emerging. We did that very well with Cambridge Quantum Computing, which then became Quantinua. When we met them, they were, I think, 400 million valuation at the previous round, and we helped them then. And they're 10 billion today, and that's publicly announced. And they're not a listed company yet. So actually, the real advantage is our knowledge of what we believe works and doesn't work in the technology stack, combined with identifying the next, very successful quantum companies that either will be acquired or become standalone in their own right. I think that's probably the most important reason. You're quite right to highlight the global aspect. In our pipeline, we have 98 companies that we've looked at in great detail. We'll only invest in 3 or 4 at our first close. And so it's quite detailed, but you have to be global. You have to be looking globally at this stage, because there are some amazing centers of excellence that we're connecting with, usually academia based. It comes from research at academia. and sometimes a big research lab, which is where these companies start. And then as they emerge into helping solve their technology problems, that's when we tend to get involved. But you have to be global at this stage, and that's why the fund is specifically targeting global investments. But almost all of them will work with us in EdenBase in some way, and this will be, if you like, if the home of quantum in London, then EdenBase will then expand internationally after the UK model is successful.
Okay, fine. And one last question from my side is the funds that you're raising, what is the use of these funds? What is it for, manpower to be recruited in these companies? Is it for more analytical work, more, software to be developed using analytical work, etc.? What exactly is this fund going to be used for?
Eloisa, it's a good one for you. The use of proceeds.
So, well, the funds for, you mean investment, for the venture investment? Yes. Oh, well, it's investing into quantum companies across the value chain and some quantum enabled companies as well.
Yeah, so in those companies,
it's a venture fund.
No, but in those companies, what are they spending the money on?
Where are they spend? It depends. It's a case by case basis. So every company might, for example, spend it more on R&D, which are the more earlier stage one. But the ones that we're looking at is more about the companies that are looking to scale their products, to expand it through several potential customers and do their proof of concepts. That's sort of more Series A quantum companies. And yeah, the moonshots would be more like it'll probably likely spend on R&D and hiring more engineers. But for us, we're really looking at there's a commercial aspect to the company as well. We want to see early signs of product market fit, and which is why we're investing more on the Series A. And the great thing is there's so many companies out there, quantum computing companies and quantum enabled companies that are already actually earning revenues from their quantum related products. So that's it's really just a go-to-market mainly, and some R&D, but not all of it.
Okay, and actually, I've just added a data point on that. The ability to analyze the type of revenue so that we can correctly price these rounds is a real skill, because a lot of the revenue is government procurement contracts as opposed to end user commercial applications. And so you've got to give it some credit, but not too much. And that's one of the special skills that we're developing, to be able to benchmark and understand how much these companies are really worth based on whether what we think is repeatable, recurring commercial type revenues.
And there aren't any tax reliefs at all because you're a global fund. There's no EIS, VCT, anything like that in it.
Correct.
Okay, it's a venture capital. It's a venture capital fund. So unfortunately, there's no EI. It's not UK only. So, but that also brings me to another question, which one of the other investors had asked me, is that we'll see a big hype in the AI valuations, globally, and how is quantum? How are we seeing quantum and the valuations in quantum compared to the AI stocks that are out there?
Nayan, shall we take Gaurav's question first?
Yes, I think Gaurav, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please.
Yes, hello, hi. It was very exciting discussion. Thank you for that. And I understand that the quantum is going to solve many complex problems. But in terms of the
we may never know.
Products we see that will be for the end users, for the consumers, and or what kind of existing products can be optimized with the help of quantum to bring more efficiency to in the consumer space, basically.
I think if I repeat the question just to clarify, I think it was what type of consumer or end user problems will quantum solve? Well, the answer is, in many things you won't see quantum. It'll be you will see for example, a new drug being launched to help with a particular kind of cancer that was developed by using quantum to identify, better drug candidates to take through trials. So that's one way that consumers will experience the benefit of quantum computing. But businesses will directly experience it. For example, if you're doing anything in optimization, let's say that you're an airline and you're trying to optimize flights for fuel efficiency and time, things like that. If you're got thousands of delivery vans across a nation and you're trying to optimize it, especially when things change, and then you have to reroute very quickly, that kind of computation, optimization computation, will be how many businesses first experience it. And that'll be embedded within the software that's used for route optimization, that kind of thing. And then going on to what Daniel spoke about, the way that this technology unlocks data at an atomic or subatomic level. You'll have companies like, paint companies asking how to develop new kinds of coatings that, for example, do antimicrobial better, or hydrophilic, or hydrophobic, or corrosion resistance. Every aspect, especially in chemistry and biology, which many people think will be some of the first places that people experience it. But how humans experience it will be a little bit different, because it'll be abstracted into applications which use the technology to deliver better services and goods that we all then enjoy.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we will see is in the early days of quantum, more B2B, and then at some point, over a period of time, you'll see B2C as well. But currently, it's more B2B, and then B2B2C is where we are seeing more of quantum. Thank you. If anyone has any more questions, you have my contact details. So please feel free to reach out to me. We are going to be having a lot of in-person events in London as well, where we are all based here. So, would happily, invite you to come to our office and meet us in person for a coffee and chat. So I would like to just finally, before we end this conversation, if in one sentence, all three panelists here, if you had to just summarize quantum in one sentence for the investors today, what would that be?
Oh, please ask Daniel that one. I mean, it's his job in our company to see around corners and predict the future. So, and he did very well in his last book. So, Daniel, what's around the corner? I want to know. I want to know what you think.
Well, around the corner, look.
Summarize quantum in a sentence, and then
quantum, very difficult. Very difficult. The only thing I would say, if it's got to be a sentence, is it is the most powerful technology we have ever built. It will allow us to unlock what we understand are the next level of the way the universe and everything works. It will allow AI systems to work more in line with that process. And it will unlock data that we cannot access and we cannot understand, which in effect gives computers a massive lead over us, because we will not be able to do what they can do. That does not mean that we have AGI anytime soon, but that is to a degree not important if they are able to compute at a scale that we cannot.
Eloisa, in a sentence?
In a sentence?
Yeah.
I think that's my answer. In a sentence with a question mark. You'll just have to imagine all possible answers in that space, because that's what quantum is all about, right?
It's true. And actually, I'd like to give my answer in a slightly different way, in that we changed, and some of you may know, I don't know if you know this, but we changed the strapline of EdenBase to be, it used to be invest, inspire, transform, which was fine. But because of quantum, specifically and quantum and AI. We've changed our strapline to be investing in a future we can be proud of. So if you ask me what is quantum, I would say it is the technology the first technology I've truly seen that I think could help us harness and solve some of the world's biggest problems. And that's why I'm dedicating the rest of my life to quantum, to be honest. So thank you. Good question.
Okay, that's amazing. So thank you, Daniel, Eric, and Dr. Louisa. I think what comes through very clearly is that quantum is no longer just a science project, but it's also not a short-term trade. What we're seeing today is an early foundation of technology that will matter enormously, but will reward patience, discipline, and deep understanding. So for people who are keen, for investors, the opportunity is not about guessing which qubit wins next year. It's about understanding where real value is being created across hardware, software, and enabling layers, and aligning expectations with realistic timelines. Thank you, everyone who has joined us today and for your thoughtful questions. If you would like to continue the conversation or learn more about how we think about quantum investing, please feel free to reach out. Thank you all. Thank you, panelists and audience, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.